question I Niioie.
Okay, Niioie is all good is what the host that Niioie you just gonna walk in gonna get no Bugata Uni. My name is Niioie. I'm Wolf Clan and I live in Ganawagi. This is my home and this is where I was born, actually in my grandfather's house because my mother was so stubborn she would not go to the hospital. She had a bad experience. So I was born right here, and I grew up in Michigan because my father had to go away to go to work. I was educated in Michigan, and then I met Otsi'tsaken here and there, and we lived there together for about a year. Our son was born over there, Ganando, who is also a graduate of McGill, and we moved back here. And in the time back here, I worked for education in town in Ganawagi, and I began to go to school part-time. We had indigenous program for a degree in education. It was actually a certificate of education. So I was in that for years and years, and then I continued and I graduated from McGill in 65. Oh no, not 65, 95 with a bachelor's of ed for so that I could become a teacher. And I taught kindergarten at our immersion school, Kanien'kehá, which I had to learn because I didn't know my language when I was growing up. Living in Michigan, just heard English. And then moving back here, I began to learn when I was 21. There was really nothing to learn from. My mother was fluent, but she was the only one in the house that was fluent. So I had to pick it up, and luckily ran into Otsi'tsaken, and we had the same interests, the same. We wanted to learn our ways. We wanted to learn our culture. We wanted to learn our language, and so that's how it all really began.
Otsi'tsaken, my name is Otsi'tsaken, and I'm a Bear Clan person, and I guess Kahnawa has always been my home. I don't ever believe I never went anywhere else. This land here, this land was in our family for a whole bunch of years. Just down the road is the farm I grew up on. So I never really said that I grew up somewhere else. But what I will tell you is I grew up in a family that were not necessarily traditional. We grew up, my mother and father, they kind of followed different ways, but they were kind of more old-fashioned, and we were farmers. You know, we lived our lives on a farm and never really came to town very much. And we were brought up in a good, structured, respectful way. And so there came a time, I guess, and one of the things that I was very lucky, I guess gifted, is that I was able to run. I was a runner, so when I went to high school, I was able to excel at racing and running, and that took me all over the country. You know, I think I was 14, and we won our first national championship in Hamilton, Ontario, in cross country, and everything was that's the way it was all the way through. You know, until my high school years, I did very well, and then eventually, when it was time to think of moving on to college, somehow, I don't even know how it happened, but I found my way to Michigan, University of Michigan, and I was accepted at the University of Michigan, which was very unusual because it's a very unique story because I never graduated from high school. I never had a high school leaving because I would have had to take another year in French, you know, and so we bypassed all of that, and I went to the University of Michigan, and so there's where I began to make a change in my life, I guess, you know, and I was lucky to learn a lot of things, but you know what, 90% of the things that I learned in school had no relevance to me. I remember Philosophy 101. I flunked that 2 times because it meant nothing to me. We were talking about Greeks, the Greek philosophers, and all of these different things, and this beautiful world and society, and it had no relevance for me. And and I never could understand the thinking there. And there were many other things that happened, but somehow I managed to get my way through college. And then by the time I finished school, I start to think, well, maybe I'll. My friends were all saying, "Oh, we're gonna take a." They said, we'll take 6 months off, and we're all gonna go back for our masters, and we're gonna do our doctorates. And I said, yeah, it sounds good, And then you know what? I met my wife in that process, and the world changed for us, and we decided to change our lives, and then we had a son, and we thought to ourselves, what do we have to offer our children? Neither one of us spoke Mohawk. Neither one of us knew anything about our culture or our ways or songs or ceremonies or anything like that, because we weren't brought up in those worlds. And so we began to think about, what do we have to offer our children? And we heard a man speak one time at a little conference here in the community. Karihwatehkwen was Tommy Porter, and he did an opening, and he did a talk about what that opening was, and I've talked about our culture. And both of us, we said, that's what we're looking for, this empty hole that's inside of us, where we have no cement in our foundation of our identity. That was empty. And we said, that's what we want. That's what we crave and what we desire to be. And so we walked in that direction, and we never looked back. We spent the last 40 some odd years of our lives, walking in that direction and bringing our children up in that direction. And what I tell people is, that dream or that quest that I was putting myself on at the beginning when I left university to go and get my master's and my doctorate, well, that all changed. And I say to people, now I went back, and on that journey I did my master's and my doctorate in my own culture, in my own language. I traveled amongst the elders. I traveled in the political systems of the Haudenosaunee. I learned the ceremonies as best as I could. And in that journey, with her mother, we learned, she taught me to speak the language, and with all the elders I knew, I learned the language from them. And in that journey, I guess I could say that I became a whole person. And I've been so lucky to be on this journey, and I don't think my journey is finished yet. I can never say to anyone I'm the most fluent speaker. I make a lot of mistakes, but I feel good about where I've come. In terms of culture, at least I have learned, and I have a feeling, and that culture is inside of me. The whole is full of my identity, and we walk what we believe or what we heard. We walk the culture, and we make it alive inside of us, and that's been part of the journey. So when I say, my name is Speckled Flower Otsi'tsaken. My clan is this. I'm a Karihwatehkwen. I'm a Bear Clan person. When I was younger, I didn't understand any of that. Now I feel, and it gives me a place, a root of structure of where I live in this world of Haudenosaunee ways. And so that's who I've become on this journey. So now when you think about that, and where we are, we raised our children to be when we were growing up, we didn't even know our names.
I knew my name.
Yeah. Well, really it was we knew, but it was not really. We always used our English names. When our kids were growing up, we were right at the edge, and we gave them English names, but we never used them. And so they've never really, they know their English names, but they're comfortable in their Mohawk names. And now we have grandchildren, and our grandchildren, they don't even have English names anymore, because they're comfortable being who they are and what they were brought up to be, and they were brought up in ceremonies in Longhouse ways. And so that's been the journey that we've been on, and we haven't completed our quest yet for total understanding of who we are. And I think that's very important. Like a lot of these young people that I know, that I see, that a lot of them go to McGill now and go to Concordia and all of these different places. We were their teachers. We were her teacher long when she was just a little girl, and it's so nice to see them now, growing to be women and men and grown-ups and having their own families, and they blossomed into beautiful Okwehonwe people. And maybe we had a little hand in that, but I'm so proud of these young people. But that's the thing that I would tell you, if all of you that are listening, this is the journey that you need to be on. Each and every one of you are going to find your own journey. You have to find your own journey. You can't be Niioie or me or someone else. You have to be you. And this identity inside of you, you have to find that yourself. You pick and glean off the ones around you until you now put all of those fruits into one bowl, and you make a beautiful Okwehonwe fruit salad. And then you blossom and you become whole. That identity is full. And once you have that inside here, now live it. Don't leave it in a book and think, well, this is what we were. This is what we could be. This is what we are, and make it alive as best you can. And that's one of the things that I think, like when I talk to people, I love to go to places and talk about my culture. I go anywhere to talk about those kinds of things, to do openings the best I can, because we have to make it real. I believe Okwehonwe people, Native people, we have a special gift. We have a special relationship with this earth, and we need to understand how special we are, and we need to make it real. We talk about all the world that we live in. We're living in hard times. The earth and the environment and all of these things that are happening. I've heard some people say we have 20 years left in this world before a major change will happen, and things will change in a major way. And our mother, the earth, is suffering. Global warming. Just look at the world. The earth is on fire. How the earth is burning, and all the hurricanes and all the things everywhere you look. Our mother is suffering, and the world around us is suffering. But I believe Okwehonwe people, Native people, we have a gift that we need to make sure that we never stop using. You look around the world, and people are so consumed with war, fighting, power, all energy, money. Who is giving thanks for their mother? When does our mother the earth ever hear our songs of ceremony to honor her? When does she ever, this mother that the Creator picked up in his hands and he said, this earth is your mother, always love her and care for her. Where does she look around the world? Where does she hear people actually doing that? We have a great responsibility, because we still have a drum. We still have songs. We still have dances. We still have a connection with the earth. And she needs to hear our drum. She needs to hear and smell our tobacco. She needs to hear and feel us giving thanks. And when we're still doing that, our Mother the Earth, will not give up hope. There are still people in the world that still believe. And that's not, but there aren't just Native people. We had a friend we met just not too long ago. He's from Namibia. He's a
Future king.
He's a future king, and he came and we sat and we talked about what his culture. And you know what? We're the same. He just comes from a different land, but he still believes he could almost tell the same story as our peoples, because we're all peoples of the earth. But the people who are giving thanks and have that mind, it's too far and few in between. Most of the world around us is too busy to care about their mother. But we, the ones who still have that gift, we need to nourish it. We need to grow it. We need to talk about it. We need to live it. And we need to share it. And you young people, you have a great weight on your shoulders. I look around me sometimes and I say, our younger people, they're poor. When I was a kid and growing up on the farm, my mother would feed us and we'd run out the door in the summer and we'd run in the bush and we'd spend our whole time in the bush climbing trees and doing different things. Take a fry pan and we'd be cooking frogs or things to eat. And she never saw us, but she never worried about us because we were all around. Every once in a while we'd come in and wipe our face and whatever. But at the end we grew up. But our young people today, now we have another thing, and we have these cell phones, computers, and all of these things. And if you look at young people today, their whole world is in a little box. And every second of their lives, from the time they wake up, they're looking in a phone, or they're playing a game, or they're looking at somebody else's culture, or whatever. And that box now has stolen their minds. And they're not in the forest. They're not in the bush. They're not on the earth. They have no stories about nature. They only have stories of what's in the box. And what's being shown in all of that, when we were kids, it was Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd and all of these people, and they were hitting each other with hammers and all kind of things when they never really died. And somebody would get crushed, and a couple of seconds later they were up again and they continued the cartoon. And today you look at the games, every game is about killing and shooting and hurting someone else, or running over somebody with your car. And to get to the next level, you have to see how many people you can kill to get to the next level. And when you get to that level, now you have to kill people faster to get to the next level. So where is life important in all of that? And where does any of these things talk about the earth and our mother and how sacred it is, life? Life is not valuable in that kind of environment any longer. And I say our young people are poor. They need to take time, put those things on the side, take time to live and make the earth your mother again. Feel her, and she will nurture you, and she will teach you. Go sit on the ground somewhere. Maybe go and put tobacco on the earth and fast and say, Mother, help me to understand what you want me to be as Okwehumwe. You know, and that's a very, if you learn nothing from all of these talks in your journey, learn that.
Good.
Spend time to sit on the earth. Spend time to touch yourself, your spirit with the earth again. That's very important. So I know she wants to talk. So
It's just that, like, yeah, the young people are playing these games all the time, and they're not living it the way we did. We had like totally different at their age. My one granddaughter's 14, and then 13, and then 10, and then really little one, and they spend more time in the house than outside of it, and we never did. You know, even though I lived in Michigan, I was always out. I'm still the undefeated champion of women's singles and doubles in Garden City. He doesn't like to tell people. He threw my trophies away. Jealousy. But they can't find me, so that's why I'm undefeated. But when we were growing up, we were always outside, and you know, my family didn't know much about our ways because we were Catholic, and all I knew growing up in Michigan was I knew my name, and I knew I had a clan, and my parents always said, don't ever accept to be a Canadian or an American citizen. That's all they told me. And we were always crossing the border because we were coming back here to visit my grandparents and my mother's family. My father is from Akwesasne, New York, the state side, but we didn't spend too much time there. So, like, for us too, when we'd come back here when I was little, we had the river, and now we don't have the river because the Canada, the United States, the world powers took that river and turned it into a seaway, a ditch, and I hate it. I really hate what they did to that river. I always did. And I can remember when I was maybe 10 years old, seeing the big hole they made in the ground, because I knew the river before. We were there every day. We lived by the well, more in town. We were just like one street from the river, and your whole life in the summertime was involved with swimming or playing there. Horses were still running free in Ganawage. Cattle were still wandering around, and you know, I don't remember ever watching television in Ganawage. I used to watch it in the States, but coming back here was a totally different life. And then they took that river, and that's a crime, what was done. Crime to the river, a crime to the people, a crime to the children, crime to nature. So for these kids, you know, for the kids today, they don't know what it's like to be attached to that river. And you know, all my memories are wrapped around being there when I was little. We never had a swimming pool. I had a wash tub that I used to sit in if I wanted to stay in the yard and swim. It was my grandmother's wash tub. But you know, for the kids, it's a whole different life, and it's not as much as our lives were, because they took the river away from us. A lot of things were taken away from us, but we've managed to get a lot of things back. And the one thing about our kids is, like, the elders are at fault too for not making time. We're all too busy. You know, everybody is working all the time, and you know, I saw that when I became a grandmother, because it seemed like I had more time for my grandchildren than I had for my kids. I was, and so that's the purpose of grandparents, I guess, to pay attention to those kids that they need. And you know, people say spoiling. I don't think you can do that. You can't do that. You know, kids need attention. Grandparents need the attention of their grandchildren, and keep the family together. And we're lucky, Charlie and I. Our whole family is here in Ganawage. when this virus began, I worried about my granddaughter who was going to school in California at Stanford. She was 20 years old. And I worried about her because she was alone. And even before she left, I worried about her. I figured if something happens there, she's alone. How is she going to be taken care of? Where's she going to go? How are we going to take? And I began to look around for people I knew out there who could help her. So you're always, you're concerned for your children. And fortunately, Stanford University was one of the first to close when the COVID began, and they sent the kids home. So we got her back right away. She was back by March of, 2 years ago, 19, huh? 19, that's 2 years. So she's been back here. So, since that time, we've been lucky. The family is close. I don't have to worry about them so much. On top of that, Charlie and I, we've learned so much together. Even when my sons were little, they were very patient with us. If there was something going on in another community, we would throw them in the car and go. And sometimes we'd have to sleep in a little tent on the grass, or sometimes people would make space for us in their home. And sometimes we'd sleep in the longhouses. But the kids were really patient with us, and they would come with us. There was a trouble in Aguasasta, and I remember taking the kids there, and I remember worrying about them, but they played outside, while these heavy discussions were happening, because in the community itself, people were being hard on each other. So we've seen those internal conflicts, and we've dealt with the outside too. When we went through 1990, right here, we had cattle, and we couldn't leave. A lot of people left, but we couldn't leave, and Charlie wanted me to go, and my mother was here, and I tried to get my mother to take my kids and leave town. I didn't want to leave him alone, but she wouldn't leave either, so we all stayed here during that time. So it's like your family was together, and we've been lucky that way, that we've always managed to keep everybody close by. The people we met in our life, amazing people that taught us. John Mohawk, it's like he passed too young, but such a unique man who knew so much, who really, it's like I really miss him, because he had a lot. He had a lot to give. And like he said, Tom Porter, the people in Aguasasta, the clan mothers over there, we've been lucky. We've met a lot of good people. So as far as resilience, when I grew up in Michigan, I knew nothing. I only knew my name, my clan, and my grandparents were here, because you go to school in the States. When I was going to school, Okwehumwe people did not exist where I went. The history started with Columbus and went to George Washington. There was no mention of Native people existing in this land. And I'm sure the kids I went to school with never thought of that. And I never brought it up, because you kind of learn, depending on where you are, where you go. Even though I was a kid, I knew that there was things I couldn't tell them. I couldn't say. It was in order for me to be able to continue, I kept it quiet that I was the Gwehumwe. And the kids used to ask me if I was Hawaiian, or they thought I was French or Chinese or whatever. They never guessed that I was Native, and I never told them. And I remember one kid even saying, "Oh, I thought you were made in Japan," but I never told them. And you learn that, because when I grew up in Michigan, it was very racist, and I think it kind of still is. So the kids I went to school with, high school, graduated there, they never knew who I was, where I came from, nothing. And I had friends that I would just disappear in the summer, and they never asked, "Where did you go?" You know, I just disappear and I'd come back. So, you know, we've had interesting lives. We've been given the fortune to meet really good people. My granddaughters are, you know, they're fantastic. They're my middle son Karihwatehkwen has married Yagahawita. She graduated from, I think, Concordia. Right now she's also
And
a
McGill.
graduate of McGill in the education program. She's teaching at the immersion school here in town. Marion is an artist. She's created works that are shown all over the place, and
Yeah,
is
she's a professor at McGill, or she was.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and she's teaching culture and language. She did a language course too, so we've been lucky. We've had good people always come in our direction, and we've had so many good experiences, just not by our creation, but by creation helping us to continue.
You know, in our journey, you know, she mentioned the word resilience, and I know a few times I've kind of said this, and we talk about this all the time. What we saw in the 80s when we were first around Kahnawa coming back, and you know, there was very little discussion about culture, identity, Haudenosaunee. You look around the community, everywhere you see is Haudenosaunee flags, clans, all of these kinds of things. There was very little discussion. There were certain families in the community, and there was a longhouse here, but it was more kind of like closed, and it was certain groups of people that stayed there. But most of the people, it wasn't out there in the community so much. And then and even we used to look around, you know, they used to have an Indian village, and they would make up songs, you know, for tourists to come, and everybody was amazed at this, like the Buffalo Bill Wild West show, those kinds of things, and everybody wore big Plains headdresses and dressed like Plains Indians, and that was Indian enough, I guess, in our community at that time. That was what they knew. And you know, over the course of time, when you look at the pictures around the community, there was no pictures, no artists drawing pictures or based on the culture or our own identity. Everything was Plains Indians with big headdresses and eagle feathers, you know, and in all of that. And then in the course of from the 80s, the mid 80s until now, what a change in Kahnawa. You know, now you look around, and I would say before, if you talk to people, maybe there was 20% of the people associated with traditional ways, and 80% were kind of Christianized or were in one group or another. And now I think it's gone the opposite way. Now you see most of our young people, all of now they associate themselves with traditional ways, and there's very little people at the churches. And that's one of the things that we've seen. Then you look around the community now, where before there was no flags or all kind of clans and all kinds of things. And
everything was Plains headdress.
And you didn't see a lot of that. Now you look at people, all these young people, you go to the graduations, everybody's got a Gastoa. Everybody's got ribbon shirts with their clans and all of that on. And those things are happening. And then it's almost like somebody threw seeds. I was thinking that there's a bag of seeds downstairs somebody gave us, and it's flowers for hummingbirds. And it's almost the same thing as if somebody threw a bunch of seeds in the community, and out of those seeds blossomed all these young people with artwork. And the artwork is all about our culture, We got some of the most beautiful, beautiful artists. The artwork that they're producing, it's amazing. It's amazing, you know, and then that's not even the only thing, you know.
The language.
The language. I remember sitting on the board of directors of the cultural center when it first started, and with a bunch of people, and we were looking. We said, you know, unless we do something drastic, we're done. The elders are leaving us. A lot of things are happening. The language is losing. Young people are not speaking. And so we had a big discussion of what are the things that's hurting us. And you know what we said? You know, our kids are sitting in front of the television and watching everything in English. It's so powerful. They go to school, it's all in English. The language is not alive anymore. And so we began to think, well, how can we change it? So some of our things, writing, people start to write about how do we make this change? And we said, well, you know, at one time, in those years, we said they used to call this town Kahnawa. And we said, why can't we just use Ganawage, what we always were? Oh, they used to, some people would say, well, yeah, that's a major, major thing. You can't just change it like this. We said, why can't we change it? It's our language, it's our name. And then we had people and we wrote about it. And then one day, people just went, and they crossed out Kahnawa and they wrote Ganawage. And so now we have eliminated that English name, that Kahnawa is just somebody's attempt to say Ganawage.
It was British.
And we allowed it to happen. And we made that change in an instant. And then we said, well, now what do we do with the language? And then we had one of, we had Gagayumsta, Betty Brispa. She was on the board. She says, I'm a kindergarten teacher. She said, I don't speak English. I don't speak Mohawk. But you know what? She said, I'll volunteer my whole class. And let's start there. So we said, how can we do that? She said, I can organize the class. I just need a fluent speaker to help me speak to those kids. And we said, let's go. And we put money out. And we hired a woman from Ganasadage to come to be her assistant, and she did the speaking. Gagayusta did the organizing, and we had an immersion program beginning. And our kids were one of our sons was the first one, the first guinea pig, I guess, in there. And we did everything we could to keep them in those programs all the way along, you know. And then the next one went through, and all the way along, we fought for that immersion program to continue.
It was only supposed to last
Yeah.
till it was only supposed to be 2 years, nursery and kindergarten. But then after kindergarten, we would go out and we would talk to all the parents. Do you want to continue? And they did. And so then we'd have to go to the school and talk to the principal to tell them we need a room, you know. And they ended up taking the library apart to make room for them. Yeah. I remember all the changes in order for those kids to continue, and they ended up going up to grade 6 that first year, first group.
And you know, there was even a moment in our time where our community was so divided, where people thought the language is so important, and then there was a group of parents, and they said, well, if you're gonna teach the kids fully in immersion, somehow you're gonna harm them. They're not gonna grow up to be able to speak another language. They'll never prosper in school or
they won't find
any
a job.
of that, and they won't find a job.
They were
and
4
so
years
there
old.
was a time. There was a time when there was a whole split in the community, where we went to one meeting. I remember in the gym up the hill, where you could cut that energy with a knife. It was so thick, and we were two sides butting heads about whether we continue immersion or not. And I guess we got harder heads because we won. As a group of people, we won. And immersion is here now, and we have a whole system. Then blossomed. You know, there was always an immersion program at the Indian Way School, in their ways. And then another one, you had a group of families say, well, they started Karihwatehkwen. Then some people started a little nest, a language nest. And then others, then now you have that's the adults, kids, college kids that want to learn the language. So for 2 years they put them in a program and they teach them the language and they come out speakers. And the language it's blossoming in the community. And I remember when there was none of that. And a bunch of people, just by people's willingness and stubbornness to say, we're not going to lose. It's not going to defeat us. We pushed all of those things through. Now, if you look in the community, people say, well, I don't really know how it happened. How did this thing all happen? It just happened. So you look at our community, resilience. We started when we were really, really poor. And all of these things are blossoming. And you look around us now, and our community is really changed. The dynamics of community has changed. And there was a time in 1978 where there was a community meeting and they said, we want to move to a traditional government. And everybody there said yes.
There was the band council.
In the band council system, and but there was a lot of hiccups in that. And we never really got to the point where the band council just said, okay, we're giving up, and now it's going to be one government. We're still going through those hiccups to make that happen. It will happen. But you know what's happening? Whether you make the change officially or not, the change is happening all the way through the community. A lot of the things that are happening from a traditional perspective and not from an Indian affairs perspective. Everything we do in a community now is coming from a traditional perspective, using kind of traditional concepts and all of this. The growth is happening and all of a sudden it's like a seed, it'll blossom, and one day the community will be a traditional community, without even realizing it. But it's gonna happen.
But Charlie, that came from the immersion program. The kids were being taught, when we moved them from kindergarten to grade 1, they were being taught religion, and they only had catechism, Bible studies, and then something called ethics for everybody else. And our kids were at that point Longhouse, so they didn't go to catechism or Bible studies. And my son, my oldest son, Ganondo, said sometimes they would leave him in the room alone and lock the door and walk out. And I didn't know that. I just found this out. They'd lock a little 7-8-year-old kid in a classroom and leave him there while they went to ethics class for however long it was, a half an hour, 45 minutes.
Church, yeah.
And but from that, Karihwatehkwen, I think she was the principal at that point. She asked Charlie, because you were working in the school then, if anything could be done for the kids that were Longhouse in the education in her school where she was teaching at, that was at Garari School. And she asked if we could somehow, take these kids during the religion period and work with the Longhouse kids. So I was on the school committee, and Charlie is always my first target, so I began a program to bring in culture class during that ethics period. And Charlie would volunteer, and then I went around. I got quite a few people who were willing
volunteered me.
to volunteer. Others got to volunteer. He didn't get to volunteer. But from that, it was just a few who would be in a small classroom, and they began to teach the little ones the songs, the dances, the stories, our ways, which were not taught at Garari School, and it was not taught at Kanien'kehá School. There were a lot of statues, I think, of Christian, because Garari School was a Catholic school. There were a lot of Catholic things there, but when they began to go in, it began to change. And so they taught, I think, twice a week. You had to go in for like a half an hour, 45 minutes. And it was always different volunteers. I would get different people to go in every week, but make sure that somebody was there to take care of them. From that small group, before you knew it, Charlie was teaching a big group in the gym. They had to move him out of the classroom and move him into the gym because all the kids now wanted to go and hear those stories and those songs. So, like he said, a seed is planted, and it grew into this bouquet. It was amazing. And so now, in our schools, from there we developed our own high school, and the high school is called Survival School, and it is for the survival of the culture. And so for when our kids go to a survival school, they're taught our history, not Quebec history. I mean, I guess they learn it, but the focus is on our own history, our ways, our ceremonies. When I was on school committee, we were developing survival school, and I remember Geraldine Standup was writing policy for the school, for the education center, actually, which we were taking over education at that point. So she was writing down all the holidays for the staff, and I asked her, I said, we have ceremonies, and when we have a ceremony, people are obliged to go. It's not a choice. You don't. It's not like church. I don't feel like going today. You're supposed to be there. And I told her that, and so she added all of our ceremonies, even though most of the time they happen on a weekend. But we have a midwinter ceremony, which for us it's 7 days long now. We keep learning, and we keep bringing from the west.
Hey.
Hello.
The hummingbird. Hummingbird just came
Come
to
to
visit
hear
us.
the stories.
He saw your flowers.
And so our staff in education are free to attend ceremonies. The whole staff, they are allowed to attend those ceremonies, which do not happen at Christmas or any of the other standard holidays. This is always our midwinter is in January, sometimes late January, and then in the fall we do the harvest ripe corn, which is a 3-day ceremony for us. It's different in different places. But all of these things have developed from that, the beginning of the language to teach immersion. It's just amazing that we've been able to witness that. And it was in a short space of time.
Yeah, those are like when you talk about resilience. That's all of the things that we convince our peoples that this is the direction we need to go in. But you know what the next one of the biggest things that we have to do is we get them to understand that void that's in here when they don't have, their identity is not solid. Now we have to fill it, and we have to teach them, nurture them, cajole them, do whatever, paint beautiful things for them, entice them, and get them to want to make the culture real inside of them. And then when it's real, then we have to convince them that make it live, make it alive, and like for us, it's not a put down in any way, but we used to have a beautiful powwow here, and people come from all over the country to this powwow, and everybody loves that, goes to dance and in the smoke dance and all of these things. But for us, if there was a ceremony at the same time as the powwow, there's no choice for us to make. The ceremony is real for us. Powwow comes from other directions. The ceremony is how we give thanks to creation, and it's not a choice, and that's what we make real. And that's the kinds of things we need to get young people to feel, and to make those choices, and to make it alive and real in their lives. But they need the foundation and the teachings, and taught in a good way, not taught from an angry way. Not to say to them, Longhouse is the best Catholic way is wrong, it's no good, or this way is no good, you know, and you hear enough of that, us and them. What we need to teach our people is this is who we are. This is our way. And all of these other things, there's nothing wrong with them, but they're just not ours. And that's what I say. This is my way. This is the way that our ancestors believed in. And there's enough in this basket here to fill 10 lives. We just have to learn about it. You know, our granddaughter, tomorrow night, we're getting ready now. We're gonna, you know, we're getting ready to do a ceremony for little people, for her. You know, the little people dance for her. And that's been around forever. And she's been seeing them, feeling them, and getting messages through there. And now it's time, we said, it's time to put through a feast and a dance and songs for them. Now, for her and them, now they become one. And now their lives are intertwined with hers. Now it's real. And for the rest of her life, she will always walk on a path, and right next to her is the little people and her caring for them. That's when it becomes real and alive. And that's what we need to teach people, that when we learn things, then it needs to be alive, you know. I see so many young guys, they're beautiful singers, more beautiful than I could ever sing in my best times. And they can sing beautiful, great feather dance songs or other things. But sometimes when there's a ceremony and there's something else going on, the other things are more important than going to the ceremony. See, and that voice and learning those things is a gift. And sometimes we got to make choices between us and creation, or that and entertainment. You know, and that's what I mean. Things need to be alive. But when you make this choice, it feels good. You're not giving up anything. It feels good to dance. It feels good to sing. It feels good to be who we are.
We should tell them about the Vision Quest, because that affected a lot of stuff. We went on Vision Quest in Mohawk Valley, and it took a year. My son and I actually were the first ones, because my son was just 19 years old, I think, just a kid trying to find his way, and I talked him into doing this Vision Quest, and we had to learn for a year. And so we went there, and I did 4 days. He did 4 days. It was amazing, and he has a lot of stories. He got a lot, because he went a lot of times. I just went once, but I know for me, I got a lesson from the birds. That little hummingbird that was just here, I was entertained by the birds that week, those 4 days that I was there, and they kind of got mad at me at one point, because where you fix your place and you stay in this little circle for 4 days and you don't leave it. And I chose right next to a river, and it's 4 days without water, which you're right next to a river and you can't drink. A little stream, actually. And when I fixed the place, it was getting dark, and I didn't want to be where these snakes are, because in Mohawk Valley they have this rattlesnake, which is really bad. So I was being real careful. I don't want to be around those snakes. And to my surprise, when I woke up after putting my tent up, getting everything right, go to bed, wake up in the morning, the sun is shining down from a different direction, and the little slope where I was on was full of snake holes. So I was in the middle of their nest, but they didn't bother me. And but during that time, you know, that was the beginning of another adventure that we went through, a series of Vision Quest and doing that, and Charlie has so many stories. And my granddaughter, Satya Surio, the one he was talking about, the one we're doing ceremony for, he saw her coming before we even knew her mother. We didn't know, you know, it was his. My son Karihwatehkwen's wife, the one that I went on Vision Quest with, but Charlie ended up seeing our little granddaughter Satya Studio coming, and this is way before, about a year and a half before she was to appear, because I didn't know her mother. I met her mother in February when my father was dying. He had seen her either the fall or the spring before, and then she was born the January after, of a year later after I met her. So it's an amazing story. He has even had a artwork made of that for her, so that she knows how special she is.
I did go on a whole number of different quests, but the longest I went was for 7 days, 7 nights of bear medicine fast. But in preparation for those things, that's when I in my fasting lodge, I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, in a dream, I could see there was a fire. And as that fire, the smoke went to the sky world, and there was a young man and a woman standing there on both sides of the fire, and they're looking up. And in that fire now was a little baby coming down. And I came out of the fast, and I told her, I said, get ready. I said, you're going to be a grandmother. And so that's what I knew that what that was. So and it wasn't till later they told us that that's what they came to tell us. And so yeah, they had come to tell us that, but they said they didn't want to disturb me because I was on a fast. They didn't want me to worry about anything or think of anything like that, but I could see it already coming. But you know what? A while ago I was talking about the things we need to feel and teach. There are, this when we did the opening. That's the foundation of everything in our culture. When they say when the Creator, if you go, we have our long creation story. And about how the Creator made all things of the earth and sky and put everything in place. And there's even a part where before even the Creator was born, where the Sky Woman came from Sky World to this world. And this Creator and his brother were born. And his brother was opposite of the creation. That's where you have the negative and positive in this world, because they both carry different parts of the power and the energy. But all of that's a long story. But when the Creator now finished the earth and things and the earth and sky, he could look and he says to all those things, there is a being coming. I will make another, but he won't be like you. He won't be able to take care of himself the way you can. All of things of the earth, you have to help him to survive, and that was human beings. We don't have enough fur on our body to survive a winter. We don't have enough strength in our bones to survive a winter. Our body doesn't know how to adapt to the cold, but a deer can, or a bear can, or a moose can. But humans, we need to take the fur of the deer to make clothing so we won't get cold. We need to eat the meat of those animals so we can survive. And on and on and on it goes. Those are the things that they give us. So when we talk of the opening, we give thanks to life and all the things that give us life. We came from the earth, and the earth is our mother. She wears a beautiful dress, the grass life, and all things on that dress, all things are woven into that dress, just like a beautiful woman's ribbon dress, I call it. All of these things are woven into that dress, and each thing has a special relationship in the cycle of life. And so for us, as we look and we see in front of us, we give thanks to all things that we see. All things of the earth, the waters, the trees, the medicines, the foods, all of the things give us life. And the only thing the Creator ever asked us is to give thanks. That's what this Ohen Karihwatehkwen is about. All of our ceremonies that we do in any kind of natural world and natural peoples is about giving thanks for life. And then, even to the sky world, even that hummingbird is part of the bird life. So he came to see us. He saw us. And he came to see what we were talking about. And so we acknowledge all the things of the sky. So that's the foundation of all Thanksgiving for us. A lot of times we forgot that, right? We forgot to give thanks. We got too macho. We got too filled with our own personal energy. And we stepped away from the earth. In that black book, I guess in some ways, those are the teachings of that book that came from across the ocean. Man will have dominion over the earth, over his mother. A man will own his mother. Where does it say that in our teachings where the earth is our mother? We don't own our mother. We care for her. She cares for us. Man, so in all the things in this world where we see, it's because man will do what he wants with the earth. She's not his mother. She's just something that he buys and sells. And look what it has done to our mother in these times. We forgot to give thanks. So what happened in our teachings? The Creator, he found a being he has no face and no heart, no pity. And he's called Kanien'kehá, the great bearer of, I don't even know what you describe, hardship, of death.
Unfortunate, misfortune.
Otsi'tsaken, the great darkness. And his responsibility is to take the spirits from these bodies of human beings. And death was brought to us to teach us to value life and not take life for granted. In the teachings it's told, in that long story, where the Creator has a stick, and for every human being that's born, you have so many days marked on that stick, notched on that stick, how many days you're allowed to live. Sometimes a baby could come, take 2 breaths on the earth and leave. And someone could come and walk 110 years on the earth before it's their time to leave, or any time in between. And so death was a reminder of how valuable it is that when we wake up in the morning and we take our first breath of the day, we still are alive, and we should give thanks because the Creator allowed us another day to live. And they said the Creator hides from us how many days we live on this world. So every day that we live, we should give thanks. So Ohen Karihwatehkwen, all the things those are the things we give thanks for. How many times we forgot that over and over again? That's a human disease. We get so full of ourselves and so full of our self-importance that we forget the original instructions. And so later, again, we forgot, and the Creator brought us the 4 sacred messages, 4 sacred ceremonies. The Creator's song. That's to honor the Creator. The Creator's always in front of us. Creation is in front of us. That's what we should always have. Alumna, when we stand up and sing our life songs and give thanks for living and alive. Kahnawa, the dance of the cycle of life. The circle in the drum. The drum is the earth, the vessel. In the vessel is water, which is life. It's circled by a skin, which is us, and all living things has a skin. And then that skin is covered by a circle, which is the cycle of life. And when you put all those things together, now you can hit it, and there's like the heartbeat of creation, heartbeat of the Creator. It's called the drum dance. And then a dance, the final the ceremony was to give thanks, was to entertain the Creator with a peach stone game. It was saying right from the creation story where the Creator and his twin, they fought over who would control life on this world. And the Creator won, so life is good. If his brother had won, there would only be darkness and no more life here on this world. So we were so lucky that Creator and creation work together to give us life. And so we always supposed to give thanks for that. We forgot again, and we became involved. We thought we were great power. We loved war. We loved confusion. We loved killing. And what happened? Blood feuds and all of these things. And the Creator sent a messenger. He brought us the great law so that we could put our weapons aside and live as one people, one heart, one mind, one people. And we live our people. We are people of one long house. And that's why we call ourselves people of the long house. It says, Senecas from the west to the Mohawks in the east, all the way through are all these nations, 5 nations, and eventually 6, and we would be people of one long house. And the earth is the floor, and the sky is the rafters. That's why we call ourselves people of the long house. Doesn't mean a building. It means a mind and a thinking, and that we would always work together to keep peace amongst each other. There would no longer be any blood on our hatchets and our weapons. But now that's a message, right? Take a look at the world right now as we speak. Planes are taking people by the thousands out of Afghanistan. Well, look at those poor men and women and children. They have no lives. They're leaving because they could be killed any minute by their own blood feuds, by anything, by people who have lost the meaning of the value of life. Life has no value anymore, and they've lost their way. We were there 1,000 years ago, and we were given a teaching. And maybe one day they will wake up and that they will understand that there needs to be peace. They haven't had peace for 1,000 years. And maybe they never will. I hope that for them, for those beautiful little children, that maybe somewhere someone will go to them and bring peace to them, so that the children don't have to suffer. See, some people say there was a peacemaker left here, or a teacher, and he went across the ocean to bring that same message that he brought here, but they put him up on a piece of wood like this, and they put holes in his arms and his feet, and they stuck holes in his side, and they took the message away from him, and they never listened, and they never had peace from then to now. Maybe we often ask that in our words, maybe it's time for the Creator to send another, maybe to them, to help them to find peace in this world. We hope that will happen so the children don't suffer. But our teachings is all about these messages. And even for some in our communities, there was another in the 1700s. When the Europeans came, they brought with them guns, they brought with them chicken pox, smallpox, they brought with them alcohol and dice and all of these things. Religion. They brought with them their black book, their missionaries, and they said they would use that to destroy our world. And they sure did. In our prophecies it says one day, when they came, they only had their black book. And there will come a time when we will have their book and they'll have our land. We are in those times now. There are times when, so many of the teachings are in there about that, and but always in those teachings they were told, for us, don't listen to all those things. Don't take the drugs and the alcohol and the things that will destroy you. Those are not ours. Go back to your drum and your ceremonies and be strong as Oklahoma people. Give thanks. Live life with your mother. Don't go to their playing cards and all of those things. Don't listen to that black book. You have your own way. That's what makes you strong. And There were so many teachings all along the way, and these are the things we need to talk to our young people about, to get them to understand about what it means to be ungwe, real people. I had a friend years ago. We used to travel, and maybe I'm going to end with that. But we say, what is our name for ourselves? Ungwe, real people. We're not Indians. We're not the ones with the dots. One time, my sons, and they were coming through the border, and they came through the border, and the border guard, he says, where are you? What nation are you? And she said, we're Indians. And he looks and says, Indians. And then somebody in the back, he says, not the ones with the dots. So, but that's their name for us. But our name is Ungwe, real people. Anishinaabe. Everybody has their own word about who they are. But one time I heard somebody say, and it makes sense in the modern world, it means real people. That means you and I and all these young people that's listening. We're the ones that's alive today. We're the present. Everything that we are is on our shoulders. We carry that. And we're carrying all of the pain and the suffering of all our ancestors who went to those schools. The things that were the lack of language, all of the pressures and all the things that they used to try to destroy us. We're carrying that all on our shoulders, but there is some left. We have a lot that we still have remaining. We need to carry that. And those ones in the past, our ancestors, they did the best they could. They died. They suffered. Some of those children are laying in the graves out west now. Nobody knows what happened to them. And is anyone speaking to their spirit and taking care of them? I hope they are. So now what we have this responsibility. As Okwehua, we have a language. We have a drum. We have ceremonies. We have responsibilities. To what the Creator made us to be. So, what are we going to give to the children who are not yet born, our future? We have to think 7 generations in the future. What we do today will determine what kind of world they will inherit. If we don't pick up our tools and plant and nurture our tongue, our language, what will we give to our children who are not yet born? What will they have? If we don't give them the fertilizer, the teachings, the culture, the identity, so that when they're born it will fill this gap inside of them, what will they have if we don't nurture that? What will we give to them? And on it goes, whatever. Their tongue, their songs, their language, their ways. That's our responsibility now. And I say it sometimes, what a great sorrow it will be. What a great sorrow it will be in this world when no more native people beat their drum. When there is no more songs. Nobody burns tobacco. Nobody gives thanks to the earth. In our world today, now, cigarette tobacco is more important than ceremony tobacco. It seems like we need to nurture our ceremonies. It's not the tobacco. Tobacco is just a messenger and a carrier, but it's the mind that we use with that ceremony tobacco. That's what has to be important. And that's what we need to plant, and we need to teach young people You know, when we talk about the resilience, the how many years now of indigenous studies and whatever, it can't just be talk anymore. It can't just be beautiful artwork anymore. It can't just be beautiful beadwork anymore. It has to, the reality of what those things stand for. We have to make that alive and real inside of us, inside of the mouths of our children, inside of the spirits of our grandchildren. That's what we need. That's how we will be resilient. That's how we will still be here in the future. And I guess that's all the
No, it isn't.
candid that I got, but I know she has a little bit more.
The last word?
Last word. Yeah, because, while he was talking, he began to talk about Karihwatehkwen. When I grew up, I had no clue that there was such a thing. I had no clue that there was such a thing as longhouse. I had no clue that there was a great law. I knew none of that until I came back here, and then little bit at a time I learned it. My parents didn't know it. They were raised Christian ways. My grandparents were very, very Catholic. I loved them and they loved me, and I'm sure they have no problem with me not following Catholic way, and I respect them that they did the best they could to survive so that I can live today. So on top of that, this Ganawage is referred to as the head of the snake. And it always seemed negative to me, but maybe it's not. A snake has a purpose in nature, and the head of the snake is the part that helps that snake to survive. And so many things have happened here in Ganawage that haven't happened to the West, and it just seems like things happen here and then they travel, and then it goes from one community to the next. I know the immersion program started here, and like Tom Porter, he compliments us on that. I believe Karihwatehkwen teaching in school began here. Our son Johadekwa, our youngest son, he was the second year of immersion. And again, the principal, Karihwatehkwen, she asked Otsi'tsaken once, in the morning when we start the school day, I was working in the office then, he was working in the school as a gym teacher, and she asked him if he would do Karihwatehkwen to start the school day with the kids. We had a radio PA system, and it was in my room, and I was the one that broadcast. So we talked about it, and my kids could do Karihwatehkwen. We have a cabin up north, a place to go to the north of us, Jawarodo, St. Lucie, where it used to be just nature. You just go there. There was no electricity. Just you're just there. The kids had. That's where I took them over. I don't know how many summers, and we would just stay out there for weeks at a time, and be alone. And there was no television. We'd tell stories, and in that, before we go to bed, we would do Karihwatehkwen, and my kids would name every insect they could in Kanien'kehá and every animal they could in Kanien'kehá. So they kind of had that idea about Karihwatehkwen. So when Charlie was asked to do Karihwatehkwen by the principal, him and I talked, and we figured it's better if we can get the kids to do this, then you know how kids are, another kid wants to do the same thing. And because right now all the adults are running everything. Your adults are running ceremonies, adults are teaching the language, adults are running all kind of businesses and whatnot, and controlling and doing everything. So we figured, let's put this in the hands of the kids, and let's see, because we felt that the others will want to learn, they will want to copy that. And because my son Johadekwa he was little, I think he was in grade 1. We knew he would do it. We knew he would put himself out there, and so we talked to him. And I still have his notes. He drew little cartoons, so he would not forget any part of it. And he would come in and he would sit at the radio and I turned it on and he would speak in Kanien'kehá, Ohen Karihwatehkwen to all the kids in the whole school, in the elementary school. And sure enough, it didn't take long. Other kids wanted to do that. They wanted to sit in the office and be heard on the radio and do Ohen Karihwatehkwen. So it didn't take long, and before we knew it, all the school was able to do Ohen Karihwatehkwen. And then it went to another school, I think survival school. Then they said, you open your day every day with Ohen Karihwatehkwen. Then it went to another school, and gradually it picked up like that way. You know, it's like just that one act of one individual can change things for, in every direction. So, like Charlie said, we have this responsibility to continue to learn. We had a friend who told us, Oguehume people never stop being children. What she meant was we never stop learning. We can never say, oh, I know it all. We have an obligation to continue learning all of our life. And that's what we've been doing. Like I said, we've been lucky. We've run into a lot of people. We have a lot of experiences. We get invited by a lot of good people to talk about stuff we know and learn about their ways or things that we don't know. And so I think, for that, my grandchildren, my children, we're so lucky. I have 3 sons. Couldn't ask for better. Kanondo, Garihio, Johadekwa. That's their names, and they've never gone by any other name. And their partners are Yagahawita, Adahaw, Adaawi, and Yagodonigure. And then my grandchildren are Sat Dioserio, the oldest one, the one that Charlie saw coming, her brother Aunt Naharodo. My granddaughter, Garihagwas, who's been with me all her life and lives with me, and I'm so lucky to have her. She's, I've seen her every day of her life. And Gahandarago and Yunya Tordo and Unya Dario, Johade. We have 7 grandchildren. We're so lucky. And they're so fine. And they know so much more than we ever did at their ages. So that's my final word.
You know what? One of the when she was talking, one of the things that we, I think, one of the people that was so, what would you say,
influential,
precious in our lives, was her mother. She was always there for us. I used to tell her, I said, I used to go, she and I used to go on a date every Wednesday. I come from Ann Arbor to Garden City, Michigan, and we go on a date. And we used to go to Sanders Bakery in downtown
not me.
Detroit. She was working, and we go on a date for hours. We'd go and we'd sit there, have coffee, and we'd talk Mohawk. And she loved her language. And so she impacted all our world. And I remember she always nurtured us. She never talked badly about the way we were bringing up our kids or our lives. And she, one of the most powerful things that she loved was her language. And she used to tell us, she says, I'm a Catholic, I was born Catholic, and I'm going to die Catholic, and I'm going to be buried a Catholic. But in the end, what she decided, I guess somehow, however it happened, is she decided that beyond religion, I guess, she wanted to be buried in her language. What she loved. And somehow, I got delegated to do that.
Probably.
And so it was hard to speak for your mother. But we did the best we could for her, And she taught us something. She taught us how valuable it is to still have our own tongue, and how important it is to be Oklahoma. So she was special. I think that's about it for us.